Hey everyone, Warwick's here. With BfA basically in the rearview and everyone's eyes looking towards Shadowlands, I wanted to look back at the journey some of the classes had in BfA. This will hopefully help understand the baseline Blizzard is working from as they shift towards class updates in Shadowlands. Today, we're going to look at the Paladin. This will look at all three specs individually and grade them on a tier scale from S tier to D tier. Because the specs have varying success in both Raid and Mythic Plus, I will grade each aspect of PvE individually, and then we'll average the grade. This is, of course, subjective in nature, but I will do my best to respect the overall performance of each spec. This is based on, again, overall performance and community perception, and not how the spec plays mechanically. We'll start with Protection Paladin. Protection Paladin has always felt like it was in the middle of the pack, and nothing ever happened that brought it out of that fire. In Mythic Plus, they were actually the second most played tank during most seasons, but their performance was generally middling at best. As of recording, only 2 Prot Paladins in the world cracked the top 50 Raider IO score for tanks. Prot Warrior has a lot to do with that, but that's neither here nor there. It's a weird dichotomy for the spec. In theory, Prot Paladin would be ideal for Mythic Plus as it has great AoE tanking tools, with Avenger's Shield, Consecration, and either Hammer of the Righteous or Blessed Hammer depending on your talent choices, all doing good AoE damage and providing a lot of that mob control that you would expect. In practice, however, it wasn't the offensive kit of the Prot Paladin that was the issue. Their defensive uptime rotated around perfect timing of your Shield of the Righteous charges and your big cooldowns in Ardent Defender and Guardian of Ancient Kings. Mismanage those, and the Paladin was about as tanky as a mage. As a main focused tank, Paladin always had a ceiling due to this lack of mitigation uptime. It was always behind Blood DK, Prot Warrior, and for a short time Brewmaster Monks, and couldn't break through. Grade here, A-. A very popular spec, clearly, but the performance there definitely was up and down, depending on who was playing the class. In Raid, kind of more the same story. They were always the third most played tank in all tiers this expansion. The mitigation uptime being lower versus, say, the near pretty much 100% of Brewmaster through Stagger, or the premier self-healing of the DK, hurt the spec and made it always feel like it was the next tier down. Their utility through Blessing of Spell Warding or Protection, Lay on Hands, and Blessing of Freedom made them useful as a raid member, but generally never as a main tank. They were best suited to the off-tank role, where their lower mitigation uptime wasn't exposed as much. Grade B. Overall grade is going to be a B+. The return of Holy Power for Prot Paladins is going to solve a lot of the mitigation uptime issues with the spec. This expansion, however, it just felt like a DPS spec with more defensive cooldowns and some defensive passives. Let's move on to Ret Paladin. Retribution Paladin is one of the more basic specs in the DPS realm, but it was very effective in niche situations. In Mythic Plus, they brought interesting utility with Lay on Hands, Greater Blessings, and frequent cooldown windows due to their lower cooldown on Avenging Wrath. However, their deficiencies overcame their upside as their low mobility, lack of sustained damage, and a lack of on-demand defenses for themselves, outside of Divine Shield or occasionally Shield of Vengeance, made them a tough choice for Mythic Plus. As of recording, there's only 3 Ret Paladins over 5k Raider IO score and none over 6k for Season 4, whereas many other specs have multiple people over 6k. Ret Paladin felt like it was missing something in Mythic Plus this expansion, but I can't put my finger onto what that is. Grade here is a C. In Raid, however, they found a strong niche. Their incredible burst damage potential made ad phases on any boss fight a bit easier to manage. The most famous example of this was probably Narcoles of Method, formerly of Method, soloing all the ads on Ashara. This actually gave that raid group a much easier time in how they plan their strategy around the entire fight. Elsewhere, their greater blessings, especially Wisdom, found higher levels of value for their longer fight time, and with the implementation of essences in 8.2, Vision of Perfection became very vital to the spec and created more burst windows, making their sustained damage look a little bit better than it would be otherwise. Sadly, Corruptions didn't really help Ret as much as it did other specs, and they got left in the dust in patch 8.3. Like Mythic Plus, their mobility being limited didn't help them, and the wheelchair spec memes stayed alive and well this expansion. Grade is a B+. Overall grade is a B-. Ret is going to get some interesting tools in Shadowlands, but I don't think the central core issues of Ret have been addressed. Their mobility and lack of sustained damage aren't really being looked at this time, so I think something needs to be addressed there for them to feel like they could be a much higher valued spec in more than just boss ad situations. Let's move on to Holy Paladin. Holy Paladin was a feast or famine type spec in terms of performance. In early patches, it struggled with AoE healing, while single target was still pretty strong. This made it somewhat effective in Mythic Plus, though far behind Disc Priest and rest of Druids overall. Once the Glimmer of Light trait became key to the spec, Holy Paladins became very strong in Mythic Plus. Their strong throughput, combined with a lot of passive damage through Holy Shock spam, made the spec quite valuable as a healer. General AoE healing was tough with mismanaged Holy Shock usage, but if you played the Glimmer trait well, you could find high levels of success. The grade here is going to be an A. In raid situation, pretty similar trajectory. Early on, they were okay and peaked as tank healers so that your Pierced and Druids, who's better off in raid healing, could focus on that aspect of the raid. Once the Glimmer trait became strong, they formed an ironclad wall with Disc Priests as the top level healers in raid. Their passive damage, their utility, Devotion Aura with Aura Mastery, and their stacked Glimmer traits made them absolute powerhouses. The Glimmer trait was so powerful and so key to Holy Paladin gameplay, Blizzard just made it a talent moving forward for Shadowlands. You know, an Azerite trait is so extraordinarily powerful that they make it a trait. Make the trait a talent for the next expansion. Grade S tier. Even before Glimmer, they had a key niche of tank healers, and Glimmer just made them all around powerhouse healers that did not give up their position at the top. Overall grade for Holy Paladin is going to be an A+. Holy Power returning for the spec doesn't feel as key as it does for Prot or Retribution, but it'll make for some interesting design choices and talent choices for the spec moving forward. While Holy Paladin isn't one of my favorite healers, I am looking forward to seeing what top level Holy Paladins do with the spec in Shadowlands. Overall, Paladins this expansion had an up or down time based on the spec you played. I think they are one of the more well-realized classes with their fantasy and how the specs play within those fantasies, and some fine-tuning is definitely going to continue to be needed. I personally have a love-hate relationship with the class. I definitely loved it early on, but as the patches piled on, I grew less and less fond of the Paladin. As a result, I'm not sure if I'm going to take Paladin into the next expansion as one of my 4 primary characters. That said, I still think they're going to be really good as a class next expansion. If you want to play a Paladin or you enjoy playing a Paladin, you're going to have a lot to look forward to next expansion. Anyways guys, that's my view on Paladins in Battle for Azeroth. The footage you're seeing here is from my Twitch stream at twitch.tv/works_BAA. I stream Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday nights from 9:30 p.m. to midnight Central Daylight Time US. I'd love to discuss this video, my past retrospective videos, or the game in general. How did you grade Paladin specs this expansion? Leave a comment below. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. It would mean a lot to me. Next up, we'll do Hunters. Until then everyone, stay safe, wear your mask, and I will see you next time.